Hey now, I'm very excited to be here. One of the only good things about living in Los Angeles is that we are a media and awesomeness mecca. And by the awesomeness part, I mean we get some amazing breweries and amazing folks representing them out here. Welcome, Marcus. Tell us your last name.
Englet.
Englet, which almost sounds like English, but is not as easily to pronounce for me, English folks. Tell me your job, shake my hand, and let's get you up on this interview. What do you do for... We're here with Weihenstephaner. Why the hell? I'm bearing the lead here. It's Weihenstephaner.
I mean,
screw you. It's your beer.
I mean, even though that Weihenstephaner is already almost 1,000 years old, I'm only working for Weihenstephaner 13 years. I'm the export director. We're dealing with 42 countries right now. One of the major ones is, of course, the United States. We are working on that. We got a couple of new markets around.
It's good, and I'm glad to see you out here and kind of expanding a little bit and dig the beers, man, which we'll talk a little bit about here in a little bit. Actually do a tasting, which I'm excited for. And so your job is obviously huge, and you're out there, and part of obviously a growing, I think, scene with your beers getting into all these markets. But you guys have been around forever. I mean, you are the oldest, I believe, working brewery on the planet. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's correct. I mean, Weihenstephaner is the world's oldest brewery in existence, which can be proved by a document from 1040, where the Duke of the area gave Weihenstephaner the right to brew and pour the beer to the pilgrims who were around. Also Weihenstephaner did this brewing also consistent from 1040 on, even earlier, which are also documents there.
We don't have
but still, I mean, there was continuous brewing also after the monastery closed in 1803. But the Bavarian king took over, and so we were brewing for the Bavarian king. And at a certain stage, monarchy died in the early 20th century, and then the Bavarian state took over. And now we are a state-owned brewery, only one out of three in Germany. And we're under the Department of Science and Culture of the Bavarian government.
Really?
Yeah.
A brewery under the Department of Science and Culture.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Why have we done that in America here? That should be it. There should be a Department of Beer.
I mean, if you come to Bavaria, and you're always invited, I think you will probably come back to me for this later. But in Bavaria, beer is culture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is, and I like that because, you know, when you think about beer, and I think in America we're starting to get back to that, recognizing beer is more than just what's in the glass. And you know, a lot of people think, oh, beer is, you know, something to drink while, you know, getting drunk, watching cops, and peeing in inappropriate places. And it is that, don't get me wrong. But there's so much more about it that's part of history and culture. And there is no better location for that, to my mind, than Germany. Is that true? Would you agree?
I mean, first of all, you're right. I mean, I think beer in our society is underestimated because to do something with a beer wrong, you can do 1,000 things more wrong than to produce wine, for example.
Right.
And producing a good beer is really an art.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know, it brings people together. I mean, you and I didn't know each other 20 minutes ago, and you know, already I think it's been, you know, I'm super charming, you're super charming, so there's that. But you know, it's nice to share beer, and there's always that commonality, and it brings people together, and I feel like it transcends the beer itself, and it creates community, and it creates friendships, and really fosters growth economically, sure, but you know, just in terms of relationships.
Yeah, so, I totally agree.
And you've been doing that for, gosh, a long time now, and I'm curious, from the perspective of looking at either the papers or just from what you hear on the brewery, how have you seen the brewery's development in terms of what beers they've done, the culture, various things that have changed over the past 1,000, 2,000 years, whatever, 1,000, whatever?
I mean, you've got, of course, a totally different brewing culture in different areas. So in Germany, as Weihenstephaner, it's already existing for almost 1,000 years.
Right.
Here in the States, all this craft brewing movement started in the early 80s, but the background is, I think, the same, to give the people a pure product, a nice product that they can really enjoy. And of course, in this 1,000 years of brewing, different beer styles developed, disappeared, but
Within the brewery itself.
within the brewery itself, because of the possibilities that you had 1,000 years ago,
Sure.
or the possibilities that you have today.
Right.
But of course, I mean, the American beer craft culture is giving a really good feedback for us in Europe again to probably try something new at one stage.
Yeah, it's exciting in that, American beer culture is so influenced by Germany, and that being sort of really one of the meccas of brewing in the history of the planet. And now it's neat to see how Americans are trying to adapt that and change it, and I think it's sort of very reciprocal to a certain point now.
That's for sure. Yeah.
And so looking back at the early days of the brewery, do you know what the first beer that they used to brew at that time? What was the standard?
I mean, at the time, in the southern German areas, they were only able to brew dark beers because the water was high of minerals, the content of minerals in the water, and I mean 92% of the beer is in the end water. So there was
100% when I'm done with it, by the way.
Yeah, okay. When you go back to another place to get rid of it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Several times, yes.
Yeah, that's right. But water is so important for it. And in the old days, you couldn't purify it or get rid of the minerals.
Right.
So the beers that were produced in that time in Bavaria were dark beers, dark lager beers, if you can translate it into that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned something too, because at that point, by creating beer, you're actually making the water potable, right? I mean, if the water wasn't good to drink, by making beer, if I'm correct, you can actually make that potable and create something you could drink.
Yeah, because you were heating it up,
Sure.
and to get all the things out of the malt. And of course, when it was if you heat up water, it's the same today in third world countries. If you heat up the water at a certain degree, you can drink it. It's getting into drinkable water, and this was really part also of the whole story, that there were less diseases in that time.
See, beer is not only curing relationships, it's curing human medicine. Did you give me a look? Stan gave me a look. I want to point that out. That wasn't my mistake. So not only is beer a delicious part of the culture, but it's saving lives at that point. And I would argue you might as well. And we're drinking right now your Hefeweizen, which again we'll try here in a little bit. But Hef is a wheat beer. This one is unfiltered. And tell me about the role wheat plays in your brewery, as well as if you can extrapolate that to German beer as a whole.
I mean, the yeast is really important for our beers,
right?
Because we are really concentrated on the wheat beers. 87% of our production is wheat beer. The Pilsner breweries, they work much more with the hops to put the bitterness of the beer a little bit into the focus.
Sure.
With our beers, in the wheat beers, there's really less low content of hops. So we want to create the flavor with the yeast, and you can really create the most different tastes with the yeast. You can have taste of clove, taste of lemon, taste of mango, passion fruit, banana, all that kind of stuff, and it's all natural. Because we will talk about that later, the Reinheitsgebot allows us only to take natural ingredients into the beer, no additives. So,
but you can tell from tasting, it doesn't need those things. Like everything you could want is already in there.
Yeah.
And we covered water being such a huge thing. People don't think about that. And obviously yeast being such a huge thing. And you focus a lot on wheat beers and things like that. And then you begin to talk about the Reinheitsgebot.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, Reinheitsgebot is German beer purity law, and it essentially stated that the various ingredients for beer could be malted barley, water, hops, and they didn't have yeast at that point.
That's right.
But ultimately they discovered it wasn't magic.
It was taken into this purity law later on.
Right.
And purity law, invented or brought in, introduced 1516, is the world's oldest nutrition law these days, which we still use. Of course, because of European Union and all this legislation, it's not a compulsory law anymore, But the German breweries, for example, all dedicated to this law and the purity law, and all of them are really still working according to this.
And wheat fits into that, okay? That's one of those allowed ingredients.
Yeah, that's right.
That's excellent.
Because wheat, you mean? Yeah,
Sure.
wheat. Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, because it said only malt.
Sure.
The wheat beers were only brought into place later. That
Once
was in,
Bavaria joined the Union, is that correct?
yeah,
Or how
that was in the 17th century, and in these days, but it was only allowed to be produced a short time, because in this time grain was really scarce.
Sure.
There was not so much around. The dukes then said, okay, you're not allowed to use the wheat anymore, because wheat you were using for making bread.
Bakers, right.
Yeah, and there was not so much around, so there were a couple of breweries who produced the wheat beers only for the dukes and for the king.
Right.
And but this changed then again in the early 20th century when it was reinvented.
Right, right. And you guys are really part of that cutting edge. And in fact, your yeast is sort of that prototypical what we think of in terms of Bavarian Hefeweizen yeast, which is amazing. And when you taste this beer, and I assume everybody watching will have to go out and do so, it's very, very present. And, you touched on the Reinheitsgebot, and I think some people will look at German brewing as being very rigid. It has to stick to this very tight box of only these ingredients. But we were talking earlier, and I feel like you're really trying to step past that, and you're really trying to show, with these ingredients, here's what we can do that is so much more extraordinary than what we've done in the past. Not to say it wasn't amazing before, but we're going to transcend that idea. We're constantly innovating too, and I think you're really bringing that spirit back into German brewing, and also then transporting it to America. What have you got going that's sort of, on that cutting edge, if you will?
To say that first, I think it is really important that beer has its tradition, and that the German breweries really dedicate to this purity law and say, listen, we will stay in between because this is our culture, this is our tradition, our history. But on the other hand, I totally agree to you. A couple of German brewers just got too lazy and said, okay, there is the purity law, and we cannot do any other different brands because of the purity law, which is not true.
Right.
Because even inside the purity law, in the limits of the purity law, you can go to the limit.
Right.
Yeah, and try to reach that limit. And we did that first time last year when we went into contact, when we really issued the product together with Sam Adams.
Right, Infinium, that collaboration
That's
beer.
right, the collaboration beer, which is going back 3 years before already, because it took us 3 times to really develop that beer.
Right.
And first promise was we wanted to use the purity law. That was our wish, because otherwise we couldn't brew it.
Right.
But also Jim Cook's attitude to say, okay, let's stick to the purity law, but let's go crazy in the limits of the purity law.
Yeah.
And I mean, to get up to alcohol level of 10.5% in the purity law, it's a hell of a job, and
It's
I
a
can
triumph.
tell you, it's really
Good.
a triumph.
And real quick, I definitely want to touch on this, but we got to get back to drinking. Tell me about, you've got another collaboration coming up. You've got this excellent program with, I believe, brewing students, or how's that working?
Yeah, I mean, this product Infinium took us a long time, and we definitely want to do something in the future with Sam Adams. But we said it was so much fun for us, and it was such a big challenge for us, and we don't want to wait so long to go for another really big event. Let's do it together with our friends from the Brewing University of Weihenstephaner.
Which is right on the same campus.
It's on the same campus. It's also owned by the Bavarian state, and we are always exchanging experiences, new inventions or so. And they have a really small, state-of-the-art microbrewery there.
Right.
And our brewmasters and the professors from the university sat together with us from the sales, because we are the guys really to bring it to the people, and we also see all the different movements here in the States, for example, what we really can do. And we said, okay, let's do some seasonal products, not in our main portfolio,
Sure.
but really. And the first one was just released. It's called White Hop Lotion. It's a hopped wheat beer.
Nice. Very good.
And
I've actually heard about this. I'm excited. I know you're going to be trying it very soon in the States. To me, it's great that you're doing that, and I really appreciate you talking to me. I appreciate you're about to taste me on some beers, and it's great to see you coming out here. I hope you come back again. Hey now, welcome to my favorite part of any interview, aside from the hand-holding we've done under the table. But it's time to drink some beers, and you have amazing beers. It's awesome. Doing an event here tonight at Blue Dog in beautiful Sherman Oaks, picturesque you might say, just as beautiful as your hometown, and almost as beautiful. I wouldn't want to insult your motherland, but we've got 6 great beers on. Let's talk about each one that we have, and then we're going to go through and taste them a little bit. So, what are the 6 that we have here?
That's right. We are starting with our flagships, the wheat beers, because production of Weihenstephaner is 87% is wheat beers. We've got 6 wheat beer styles, we've got 6 lager styles, and then the Infinium, this corporate product between us and Samuel Adams. And let's start with the Crystal Clear. The Crystal Clear is the mother of all the wheat beers. After being reinvented in the early 20th century, 1927, they come out again. And the first wheat beers till in the 1970s, 1980s were all clear. They were all filtered, yeah.
Now, why would one want filtered versus not filtered? Is it purely appearance, or does it give a different character to the beer? I guess we'll kind of find out to some extent.
That's right. I mean, it's a taste, of course, because filtered, non-filtered, you have got the yeast in there, which makes a difference.
A little fuller mouthfeel, perhaps.
That's right. And but in the beginning, unfiltered beers were not so popular. So it was really in that time when they were reinvented in the early 20th century, unfiltered beers were the product.
Excellent.
And only afterwards, when people found out that unfiltered beer is not off, because when beer is getting off, it's getting cloudy.
Right.
So people understood that. So it's also some kind of the beer culture.
Sure.
That people they changed to the fuller version.
That's excellent.
So in between the times, it changed.
Enough yap. Let's drink, brother. Come on. I mean, you're interesting and all, but I'm much more interesting with the beer, whether you are or not. So start with the Crystal Weizen.
Yeah. Shall we share it?
I would. It's I would like my own. The herpes are acting up, I'm not going to lie to you.
That's right. But, from good old Germany, no herpes in
no herpes in Germany?
Yeah, no.
Well, I should have spent my college there.
Not imported to the United States, of course.
Oh, no, of course. Cheers. Or what do we say?
Prost.
Prost.
Yeah.
Now, moving on, this is the one I'm most familiar with in America. We see a lot of it. This is the classic Hefeweizen that you do, the unfiltered version of it. Let's throw it in the glass and let's talk a little bit about it. Please pour, good sir. Giddy up.
Pleasure.
Now, what's great about this beer, and I think a lot of German beers, there's a beauty to the beer itself, just how it sits in the glass. And when you look at it, look at that beautiful head on that. That to me is quintessential Hefeweizen. Is that something that you really look for, both in brewing and in presentation?
Of course. I mean, the pouring is one part of the beer culture. Using the right glass, what we don't do here, but for the tasting it's all right. But using the right glass with a head, this is essential for the beer. And never put a lemon into the beer, because that will change the flavor profile of the beer totally, and it will kill the foam.
Right.
So these are essential things, but the head of the beer, it's essential. And we always in Europe say foam is beer. So wait a little bit and it will come up, and the beer will show itself.
That's beautiful.
It's hidden in the beer.
And can we just say this again to camera, because this is probably the most important thing you'll say all night. No lemon in Hefeweizen. I'd like you to repeat that into the camera.
No lemon, because a good beer doesn't need extra taste, and the beer has its extra taste. It has its flavor, banana flavors, citrus flavors, out of its natural character, and it doesn't need extra additives in it.
Thank you. That to me is quintessential in beer. And you mentioned like those different flavors and lemon and things like that. A lot of flavors you get from this beer is from the yeast, actually, correct?
It is actually all these fruity flavors, banana flavors, citrus flavors. It only comes from the yeast.
Right.
And this is why especially the unfiltered beer is also so fruity Depends on the yeast that you're using. We are using a special yeast. All our competitors using different kind of yeasts, and this makes the little differences in between the beers.
Yeah, and your yeast, I mean, is sort of the quintessential Hefeweizen yeast. I mean, across the world, yours is known as really about the best one and the paramount baseline yeast. So, are you using the same yeast in both the Crystal Weizen and the Hef?
Yes, of course. The yeast is the same. But the only difference in between the crystal and the wheat beer is the malt.
Right.
The wheat beer, the Hefeweizen, uses a little bit roasted barley malt.
Oh, really? Okay.
And the crystal doesn't have that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I can tell you they're both better. Real quick, which one do you prefer, Crystal or Hef?
Depends on my mood, on the day.
So politically correct. I love both my children. I do. My brother.
But of course, I hardly can get crystal clear anymore because it's gotten so pushed out by the Hefeweizen.
Sure. Yeah. Well, they're both great beers. That's excellent. Yeah. And we're looking at a beer now, which I think really until a very few years ago wasn't available, at least to us in California. I don't know about America at large. Vitus. Vitus, am I saying that correctly?
Totally correctly.
And this is, tell me about the style of this beer and really what sets it apart from the ones we've had so far.
So Vitus, the name is a holy name. He's a holy man who was also responsible for the brewers. So this is why we took this name for the beer. Like a beer that we taste later is Corbinian. It's the founder of the brewery. It's also Bock beer. This is a Weizenbock.
Okay.
We actually really didn't have that till 4 years ago because we reinvented this. We had that already 60 years ago as a crystal clear wheat beer bock, but this is a cloudy version now.
Is that based on sort of following the market and understanding that people are getting more savvy and they're more acceptant of the unfiltered wheat beers, or is it that you got a different quality by doing it unfiltered that you thought was more in line with what you were looking for as a brewery?
I mean, the tendency in Germany goes a little bit lower alcohol, still tasting profile, but lower alcohol, and this is why we didn't have it for such a long time anymore.
Okay.
But in export business, especially United States, required a Weizenbock. And this is why I talked to my brewmasters and I worked on them really hard. And all of a sudden, when they really couldn't stand my whining anymore, they said, okay, we will take this old recipe, adapt it to the unfiltered version, and this is where we are. I mean, it's a Weizenbock, 7.7% of alcohol. It's quite a high alcohol percentage, but if you try it, and we will do now,
yes.
You will taste that it has a high drinkability. You don't feel the alcohol at all, and this is really what you want to have, because you want to have a couple of these beers and not say after one beer, oh, I can't drink it anymore. Prost.
Prost. Oh man, that's beautiful. That's really nice beer. And here's what I've learned for this beer is whining gets you a lot. So the more you whine, you can get anything. And kids, I want you to take that home with you. So.
That's right. But whining, but do it right.
That's why I never get away with anything. Roast.
So the next beer that we're tasting is the...
Look at the host here, getting right into it. He's like, I got a train to catch, guys.
Yeah, that's right. It's the original lager. So this is the Bavarian beer, the typical Bavarian beer that you are drinking for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You can always have it. It's the Bavarian Helles.
Okay, so it's a Helles style.
It's a Helles
great.
style, yeah. So this is one of the original Bavarian beers, and yeah, let's try it.
It's excellent. Now, Helles style, for those of us in America, we're sort of used to that Pilsner style, maybe a little hoppier, very crisp though. Talk a little bit about how this differs from, say, your typical German Pilsner, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, the Bavarians are used to a little bit a sweeter style of beer. So there's also the Märzen style of beer, which is really heavy, but the Helles has a different kind of wort, so it's a little bit lower, and the beer is lighter and not so bitter. So this is as I said, the beer of the Bavarians, and many people really think, okay, making a special beer like a Hefeweizen or a Kölsch or so is very difficult. To make a really clean and nice lager beer, this is type is Helles style. That's really a really craft.
It's an art. I mean, to take such a delicate beer like this and make it constantly flavorful, but again light, and do that on a consistent basis is very, very difficult for any brewer. So this is really, really nice.
Yeah.
This is a great beer.
No, for us, this is really important to have that in our portfolio. What we think for the United States, a wider portfolio is better anyway, to cover more beer styles, to cover more people that find the right beer out of the Weihenstephaner range.
It's great. Definitely seek this one out. I like this a lot. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, here we sit. It's a lovely, chilly, if we will, night in October. And, of course, recently in Germany we had Oktoberfest, which happens every October, right?
No.
Yeah, there you go.
Last 2 weeks in September, to the first weekend in October.
So it ends in October, but it starts in September traditionally, and I don't think a lot of people know that. So we are drinking, what do we call this, your Oktoberfest beer? It's called Fest beer, after all.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is our Oktoberfest style beer. We call it Fest beer because we are not a Munich brewery. We are not brewing our beer inside the city limits of the city of Munich.
Cool.
And only the breweries who brew inside the city limits of Munich are allowed to go to the Oktoberfest. But of course, we have also our regional beer fest, which is always in the beginning of September, and this is the beer of that season. It's Oktoberfest style beer, higher in alcohol. It has 5.8% of alcohol, like all the Munich beers have as well for the Oktoberfest, because otherwise you're not allowed to call it fest beer.
Right.
It's a little bit fuller and has more alcohol, and you will taste it, especially when you drink liters.
Are we drinking liters? This is the greatest end of my day ever. Oh man, that's really nice.
Yeah.
That's really excellent. And is this, when you say fest beer, is this the same thing that you would get if you were in Germany during your fest? Okay, that's great. So we're getting the same thing on.
I mean, all the Weihenstephaner beers are the same, what we export and what you can have at the brewery-owned restaurant next to the brewery. So all our beers are actually the same what we have in Germany. Yeah.
It's really lovely. What am I tasting here? Give me a quick tasting note on this.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a little bit of Märzen style. It has 5.8% alcohol, higher wort, a little bit higher hops, and yeah.
That's great.
This
is a really lovely beer. And is there a special toast for Oktoberfest, or is it still Prost?
I mean, you can really make the toast like once zwar Xuffa.
Baba Booey.
Let's do it. Cut. Thank you.
Here's the worst part of my day. It's the part when I stop drinking, but we do have one great beer left. I'm excited to try it. This is Corbinian.
Yeah.
And this is your Doppelbock, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. Tell me a little bit about it, and let's get to drinking, my man.
The weird thing is that we really stop our conversation here, which was really nice, actually.
He's lying.
Of course it is. Because Corbinian was the founder of the Weihenstephaner brewery.
Really?
So now we end our discussion here. And Corbinian was the founder, which goes back to the year 725 when he founded the monastery of Weihenstephan. And to his behalf, we named this Doppelbock after his name, Corbinian. It's a real bottom fermented Doppelbock with 7.4% alcohol. You can really taste the roasted malts.
And not only that, but the aroma on this is just beautiful.
I mean, of course, the higher the alcohol, the bigger the aroma, because it's in the nature of the beer that the more alcohol it has, the alcohol is carrying the flavors much better than when it's lower alcohol.
Right, and then to me, I get a really nice malt profile on it, beautiful sort of a fruity aroma, and the flavor is full. But you talk about higher alcohol, it doesn't have that piece where it's burning your mouth. There's nothing hot about it. It's just beautiful and elegant, especially for a bigger beer like this.
It's smooth, and you have to say this is the beer which has the biggest bitterness in the beer, but you cannot taste it because of this malty aromas and the high alcohol.
Wow. For those of you watching, this is the point where I've essentially completely lost my mind, because holy Lord, this is coming home with me. Oh, and hey, look at this.
This is Corbinian.
What would you call it? A Stein? Is that proper?
Yeah.
It's also my doctor's name, so I just want to make sure that's correct.
Is it German?
Maybe at one point, but I don't think so anymore. Excellent. All right, I cannot thank you enough for doing this. Only because of the beer. But no, you were great talking to, and seriously, really good beers. And it's nice to see Americans really embracing these styles and starting to get the idea of tasting classic German beers made in a great way. And I appreciate your time. I know you're a traveling man. So.
Yeah, but it was a big pleasure as well, and hopefully we could tell the people a little bit about it.
I would love to.
Yeah.
And when you fly me out there to visit your brewery, we will definitely cover that as well. So I appreciate that offer that you gave earlier, and all expenses paid too. It was amazing. What a nice guy, and it's right here on camera.
Under influence.
Absolutely. We'll be using your black Amex card. Marcus, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
And as you say,
Prost.
Prost.
Cheers.
Cheers.